All right. Well, unfortunately, when we talk about boxing nowadays, today's fans always seem to bring up money in regards to fighters' purses. Everyone is counting the fighters' pockets. And it becomes more about fans being managers, financial advisors, and acting as if they're part of the fighter's team. And they seem to be more concerned about what the fighter makes as opposed to how good the fighter actually is and if he's a worthy champion, if he's a worthy contender. So it becomes more about talking about the money as opposed to the actual fighter and his skills. And although I've been critical of a lot of people for doing this, I'm going to come off as a hypocrite because I do the same thing. I get lured into doing the same thing because when you hear fighters themselves constantly do it, when they say, I don't need this guy needs me. Look at what I'm making and look at what he's making. When their fighters are using that as an excuse to not fight each other, regardless of how good they are in terms of skills and where their rankings are and whether they're champions or not, when they start putting that before everything else, and they use that as an excuse to avoid each other, and promoters do the same thing, then we have no choice but to talk about that and those things as well, unfortunately. But the topic of this seems to have intensified due to the division we have right now amongst boxing fans between AJ fans and Deontay Wilder fans. And the greatest argument that the AJ fans have against the Deontay Wilder fans is, look at what Anthony Joshua has made and look what Deontay Wilder has made. So that begs the question, are these numbers 100% accurate that are reported to the commission? Because history has shown us that they may not be. Because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., back in April of 2015, April 17th of 2015, it was reported that he made $2.5 million against Andrea Fonfora. But if you look on the net, there's actually a photo of a check, and it has Al Haymon's LLC on it. I believe it says Heyman Boxing or Heyman something or other LLC, and the check is written out in the amount of $1,750,000, and on the memo part of that check it says purse. So does that mean that Chavez Jr. got the $2.5 million from the promoter and also got a separate check from Al Haymon? Because I believe that was in regards to the case between Top Rank versus Al Haymon. I know Golden Boy had a case against Al Haymon as well, but that was listed as evidence that Haymon was violating the Ali Act because it said purse on there. So I think the defense of Haymon was, that was like a gift, bonus check, or whatever. So you can look at that however you want to. But also, Eddie Hearn's recent offer to Adrian Broner, where the reported purses that were listed to the commissions that Adrian Broner fought in his last 3 fights were $1 million. But Adrian Broner said, if you guys think that's all I make, then you're crazy. I've touched much more than that. So that begs the question, is Al Haymon cutting these guys checks along with the promoters' checks, whether it be training expenses, bonuses, or whatever he wants to call it? Because that seemed to have been the defense in this instance with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I believe it was listed, or the defense was that this was a bonus check or this was a gift or whatever on top of the purse. So it seemed to have been accepted. I don't know, because the case was thrown out in the end. But at the end of the day, also if you go back in history, shout out to FightHype.com, they had an article out there about Manny Pacquiao, because when he had his big fights against Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, Joshua Clottey, Antonio Margarito, all those fights, it was reported by Bob Arum that he was making in between 20 and 25 million. But if you go and you look at the listed purses that were given to the commission, they were only 6 million, 8 million. One of them was 11 million. So, and I have the links posted in the description box if you guys want to reference anything that I'm describing right now. So, do promoters not give the accurate number because they want to withhold or withhold other monies to help the fighter out with their taxes, or so the fighter can write these things off, or not have to pay taxes on them if they're listed as a gift or whatever? Is the promoter, or in this case Al Haymon, doing the fighters a favor by not giving the accurate purse, or in Al Haymon's case, the promoter hired for the event or that's being used for the event, does he not give that promoter the full amount to give to the fighter, and does he withhold some of the money and write his own check as a bonus, as a gift, as a training expense? Is that common practice in the sport today? Because I got into a little conversation with Henry Ramirez, as you guys know, the trainer for Chris Arreola, because I posted a picture of Anthony Joshua's last 6 fights and his purses and Deontay Wilder's, and people were saying, "Oh, well, Anthony Joshua's those numbers are wrong." So if Anthony Joshua's numbers are wrong, okay, because they are different than what what has been reported in the UK websites and the UK press. And I know the UK may be a little bit different, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone in the UK. I believe that the purses in the UK aren't released to the commission. They don't have to do that, whereas in the United States, in most state commissions, that the purses are given to the commission, and then they're released from the commission to the press. But in the UK, I don't believe they do the same thing. They don't have the same practice in the UK. But regardless, so if Anthony Joshua's purses that are in that graphic are not accurate, then why are we to believe that Deontay Wilder's are? How do we know that he's not getting a back-end check or a bonus check or any type of check that is not released as purse to the commission, and it is classified in some other category? How are we to just assume that isn't happening, with these Haymon fighters, and particularly Deontay Wilder? Because Stephen Espinosa replied to a tweet that was put out there by this guy Adam Abramowitz or whatever, who said it was silly for Eddie Hearn to think that Adrian Broner would fight 3 times a year, because I guess the deal was for $6.5 million for 3 fights. And Espinosa replied, "If you think he's only making $1 million a fight, then you're silly. Then that's silly," I believe he said. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "and that's silly." So Espinosa would have some idea what is going on behind the scenes. He used to be a lawyer for Golden Boy Promotions, so I'm sure he knows a lot of the inner workings of how these fighters are being paid. So again, are these numbers accurate? Are fighters getting money in some other way, shape, form, or fashion? And are they getting checks that aren't necessarily listed as the official purse? That's the big question. So if Joshua's numbers are allegedly not accurate, that are posted in that graphic, then why are we to assume that Deontay Wilder's numbers are as well? Because Manny Pacquiao, again, Bob Arum would tell us, "Oh, well, he's getting 20 for this fight. He's getting 25 for that fight," and it would be released to the press, and everyone would be saying, "Oh, he's getting 20 for Shane Mosley. He's getting 25 for Antonio Margarito. He's getting 20 for Brandon Rios." And meanwhile, the purse that was given to the commission and is released to the public says 6 million, 8 million, 7 million. So there's got to be another way that these guys are getting paid outside of just the official listed purse. So that's something we have to look at here. And I think we should consider this I think UK fans should consider this when they're criticizing what Deontay Wilder makes per fight, because we don't even know the deals that these fighters have in terms of merchandising. We don't know, I know that a lot of fighters have sponsorship deals outside of boxing, but what about sponsors for a specific event? How is that factored in? Do they get some of that too? I know when fighters wear logos and stuff like that, they're getting sponsorship money. But what about those logos that are in the ring? Does that go entirely to the promotion, or does the fighter get a cut of that? So there's so many things that we don't know about, and I think it's to the benefit of the fighter, whoever's handling them, whoever's promoting them, if they have a real concern about the fighter's future. And we know Al Haymon treats his fighters very well because he's an advisor, so obviously he's looking out for the best interest of the fighter. So I'm sure they're finding ways to minimize the tax and minimize any type of fees that these fighters will have to pay. And maybe these fighters don't want the public to know exactly what they make. Just like in the UFC, these fighters get a lot of bonus money. And Dana White and the UFC have been criticized, I should say, by ESPN and a lot of media members about allegedly how little they make. But Dana White came out and said, well, again, you guys don't know what these guys are getting on the back end. You don't know their pay-per-view deals. You don't know their sponsorship deals. You don't know their bonus money and this and that. And he said a lot of these fighters don't want you to know. They don't want people to know how much they make. They'd rather people perceive that they're making less than they're making, because I'm sure they have family members and people that would probably hit them up for, hey, give me this, give me that, or whatever. So I just think this is a good debate. This is a good argument. We all want to talk about, fighters in terms of what they're worth, and this guy doesn't need that guy, and this guy's only making this guy's only making that. But how much do we really know? Do we know the whole story? Do we see the total picture? And this isn't to say that Deontay Wilder is making what Anthony Joshua makes. We know Joshua is the A side. Okay, we understand that. We know he makes more than Deontay Wilder. We get that. But when people that are Joshua fans want to sit there and throw shade on Deontay Wilder, they say, oh, he only sells 8,000 tickets, which is a total lie. He sells 11, 12, 13,000 tickets at the Barclays. And they want to, exaggerate and lowball the number down to 8,000. So, oh, he only made 2.1 million. Okay, but we don't know, again, as I said, not to beat a dead horse, what other money he's getting from Haymon or from anyone else that is part of his management team. We don't know what checks are getting written on top of that purse check. So if we're going to sit there and try to talk like we know what's going on, we really can't give an accurate description, because, again, there's so much information that we don't know. So for Eddie Hearn to just say these things and just assume these things, I think is a little bit naive on his part. And, again, we don't have the inside track on what's going on, but you would kind of, assume that Eddie Hearn would know. So I think these are just tactics for Eddie Hearn and Team Joshua to try to diminish Deontay Wilder. And again, no one's saying that Anthony Joshua is not the A side here. But again, in regards to promoting an event, one guy is going to be the A side. One guy is going to have the bigger name. But look at Ryabinski, Andreas Ryabinski, who handles Alexander Povetkin. Alexander Povetkin was the significant B side against Vladimir Klitschko, but guess what? That fight went to purse bids, and that fight ended up being in Russia because Ryabinski had more money than Klitschko's promoters, and they won the purse bid. So you can be the A side. You can have the A side fighter, but just because you have the A side fighter, if that B side promoter has more money than you, then he can take the promotion from you, and he can be the lead promoter even though he has the B side fighter. So yes, they are using Joshua's name, and yes, if Ryabinski is in a position where the fight with Povetkin and Joshua goes to purse bids, if that's the next fight, and he wins that purse bids, guess what? He's going to be the promoter with the B-side fighter who has bought control of the promotion, just as Deontay Wilder's team tried to do. And because this is just a unification and it's not a mandatory, there's no way that Team Joshua can be forced into having to accept a deal from Wilder's team. Whereas if Wilder was the mandatory and he was able to his team was able to outbid Eddie Hearn's team, then yeah, the fight would most likely be in the United States because they were the ones putting up more money. So just keep that in mind. Everyone wants to talk about, this guy doesn't need this guy's the bigger name, this guy's the bigger draw. But again, one thing that's being overlooked there is, does his promotional team have enough money if put in a situation and a fight goes to purse bids, can they outbid the B-side's promoter? Because you can have an A-side fighter and you can end up being the B-side promoter. And that may very well be the case in a Joshua Povetkin fight if that fight goes to purse bids. So just keep that in mind. All right, that's all I got for now, man. Until next time, Bieber's out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace. Have a great day.